Alright, let's start off by creating a sprite. We're going to need to call this sprite SPR bird. I might make it a spaceship. So SPR spaceship is going to be my spaceship, and I'm going to edit this. And like I said before, we're not going to worry too much about graphics at the moment. We're going to make this sprite 32 by 16, and I'll zoom in here and I'll just draw a very average spaceship for now. Might need some blue on it. And let's give it a wing. And I'll fill that up. And we'll give it a fin at the back as well. Fill that. And I will give it a cockpit too. So white. And I'll just erase some bits at the front. So get the eraser, erase a few of those pixels at the front there. Alright. And zoom down. You can see there's my spaceship. It looks pretty neat, I reckon. And click the tick. So there's my spaceship. That's my sprite. It's going to work for the game. I'm going to need another sprite. So it is important to set your sprites up first, but this one I'm just going to not worry too much about. Sprite obstacle. And edit sprite. This is going to be quite a large sprite. I'm going to make it, it's going to need to be quite high. It's going to actually be a bit higher than the width of the whole, than the height of the whole room. So I'm going to make this quite a small size screen. It's going to be about 200 pixels high. So this is going to be 300 pixels high, maybe 60 pixels or 100 pixels wide, and 300 pixels high. Okay, so that's 300 pixels high. I'm going to edit this, and I'm just going to draw a very, very quick obstacle that comes down to about halfway and leaves a gap in the middle. There's probably too small of a gap. And I'll fill it with a grey so we can actually see it. I'll have to fix that corner up there. It's probably too small of a gap. I might need to erase some of this here. And fix these boxes up. Okay, so there's a decent gap in between those. So that's my obstacle sprite. Now I'm going to need to make objects for both of those. I'll also make a background this time around. We'll make a background and we'll edit the background. Oops. New. My room width is going to be 200. Well, it's going to be 300 actually. And my room height is going to be 200. So there's my background. I'm just going to make a pretty average background. Image, we will set a gradient fill. And I'll just click OK. That didn't seem to work. Image, gradient fill. Okay, there we go. That'll do. There's my background. Done. So I've got, I better call that BG main game. And click OK. Now we're going to change all those things later on. So don't worry about it at the moment, because it is more important to get the actual programming done than it is to worry about this stuff here. If you can't program the game, there's no point if your graphics look great. So objects for this, create an object for the plane, obj ship, or even just call it player, and that's going to be visible. Create an object for the obstacle, obj obstacle. And that's it. Now we need to create a room, of course, and this room settings they're going to be quite small. So it's going to be 300 wide by 200 high. So it's only a very small room. And we're going to go backgrounds and select a background image for our game. We don't need a grid this time around. And we're going to click the tick. Now we're going to go into the object player. Now what we're essentially going to be creating is something like Flappy Bird. Add event. And when it's created, I want to set this right in the middle of the room. So there's several ways to do that. The easiest way is to make it jump to position. And the position I want to jump it to is the width of the room divided by 2. So there's a special variable in here called room width, which I can use. And also the height of the room divided by 2. So if the width is 300 and the height is 200, then this is going to put it at 150, so 300 divided by 2, and 100, or 200 divided by 2. So let's just check if that works. I'm going to put my plane just up the top here. Let's hit play and see what happens. There's my plane in the center of the room. I can make it more in the center by clicking center on that, and then you can see it's dead set in the center of the room there. Alright, next thing to do is to add some gravity to this. So we're going to set the gravity 270, and it's going to be 0.3, maybe 0.3. I'll have to try something out and see. Okay, so 0.3, it falls off quite nicely. We might have to check it in a moment. And let's go back into the object for this. So we've got gravity. When it's created, it's in the center of the screen. We're going to add a simple keyboard event, and it's going to be space. When I push the space bar, I'm going to add some vertical speed to it. Now this is something you'll need to play around with. So -3 might not be enough. And if I push space, and the gravity might not be good enough here, because this is going to be pretty easy to work. But I might have to increase the gravity by a bit. So 0.5 might be too much. And set the vertical speed. Now this has got to counteract the gravity. So I might have to set it to -8. That might be way too much, especially if I push space there. It's definitely too much. So I'll have to set it to maybe -5. And that seems like a pretty good amount. The tilting animation, we can sort that out later on. Now the next thing I'm going to do is put my obstacle in the room. And the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to have a create event for the obstacle, and we're going to make this jump to we're going to make this jump off the screen. So the X is going to be 320. That's off the screen, or it should be at least. And the Y value is going to be a random. And what we need to do is basically make it randomly between the room random range, between the room height divided by 2 -50 and the room height divided by 2 +50. So if the room height is 200, room height divided by 2 is 100, and then -50 is going to be 50, and +50 is going to be 150. So it's going to come in anywhere between 50 and 150 on the Y. And because it's 300 high, it should never show the top or the bottom of it. So that's where it's going to come in, and I'm going to copy and paste this bit of code here. I'm also going to make that come in at a bit wider, maybe 350, and click OK. I'm also going to make it start moving. So its vertical speed, or its horizontal speed, is going to be maybe -6. So let's test and see how this works. I've got an error in here, and that error will be in here somewhere. Unfortunately, I can't make this bigger, so I have to kind of scan backwards and forwards. So there's my first bracket, I didn't close the brackets on the end. So that did work, sort of. Oh, it's coming in. I know what the problem is. I need to make sure that I center this. Okay, so that's the center there. And that comes across quite well there. You can see that one was a bit higher. So that's good. Now what I need to do is add an event. And it's going to be a step event. I don't want to add an outside room event, because what will happen is it starts outside the room. So that'll be a problem. I'm going to need to add a step event. And I'm going to check a variable in here. If the x value of this is less than 0, I'm actually going to make it less than -20. That will mean it's fully off the screen. So it's smaller than -20. I'm going to set the x back to 350. So it's going to jump back over the other side. And I'm going to set the y back to what I had set the other one. So it's going to pick a new random range or height. So let's check that out now. I forgot to close the brackets on it again. And then we'll pause and go over what we've done. That doesn't seem to be quite right. Oh, I know what's happening. This here, I need to put blocks around it. So it only does both of these things if it's smaller than 20. Because what was happening was the if statements, these ones in the octagons, normally will always only execute the one afterwards, immediately afterwards, and it will do the rest regardless. But if I put it in a block, it'll only do these things if that is true. So let's check that. Okay, so that's working. Let's see if I can bring my spaceship back up. Okay, so this seems to be working really well. I've got no collisions at the moment, so I want to check what happens when the spaceship is outside of the room. And we're going to make this a full game, so we are going to add game over screens, title screens, scores, and everything like that. Okay, so let's go back to here. And we're going to add in, what are we going to add in? Collision. So we'll go back to our player, add event, collision between the obstacle and the player. If this happens, we are going to go to a game over room. And that's what's going to happen. We're going to go to a game over room. We're not going to do anything else. We're just going to go to a game over room. So that's extra is under main 2. We're going to go to the next room. We can do a cool little transition. And the next room, so this is the, I'll rename this RM game. Going to make a new room, RM game over. And click the tick. Now there's nothing in that room at the moment, but we just want to check to make sure that it works. Okay, so I've gone to the second room. It's actually a lot bigger than the first one, so I'll need to make sure that the settings for this room are the same, 300 by 200. Click the tick. Crashes, it goes to the next room. I could make it freeze for just a second. Okay, that might be a bit better. So instead of immediately going there, the player gets the opportunity to see, yeah, I did actually crash, and then it will go there. So it pauses and then it goes to the next screen. The other thing I want to do is, if the player, I might just get it to freeze for 1 second when it starts. And I don't think there's a button that I can make it kind of wait until the user pushes something. Let's see, there might be. We can add that in later on. So it's just going to start and it's going to sleep for a second. And then I want to add an event, other, outside of room. So if the user ever goes outside the room, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to pause for a second and then we are going to go to the next room. We can have a, oops, it crashes. At the start of the game. Now that, you may have noticed, it didn't quite cause an error. What I'm going to have to do is go back up to here. And you'll see this bit here. What it's doing is it takes this whole square. If any part of that square collides with the other shape, it's going to cause a crash. So if I modify mask, I go in here, I should be able to see precise is what I want actually, so I'm not sure why it actually picked that up. It might have been my error, but precise is what you want. You want to make sure it's precise and automatic for most things. Sometimes when you do your animations later on, you may have to change them, and we'll cover all this stuff in time. So I'm just going to leave that there and make sure that the other one is also set up as well. But this one's going to be set up to be precise as well. So that's in the center, yep. And now there's a few things that I'll need to fiddle around with here, such as the gravity. Maybe the gravity's not high enough, and I might have to put it up to 0.6. And that is still colliding with that for some reason. Go back to here. Let's just check one more time and make sure that okay, maybe it is taking it as the center of that object is being considered. Oh yeah, okay, there it is. That's the problem. I'm going to have to edit this here. Edit this sprite. I might just have to make it again, and I'll just erase everything from it. So transform, there should be an option to clear it. I'll just erase everything from it instead. So when I erase it, it's got this hard edge on it, but I'd had the soft edge. So let's just check and see. Modify mask. Well, that's actually what I want, but that's quite strange that it's doing that. So let's just delete this. Edit sprite, delete that image, create a new image, which is it's going to be 100 by 300. Click OK, and I'll draw two rectangles on this. One that comes down to about there, and the other one that comes to about there. Click tick. Okay, so that looks good there. There should be enough space to fly through the middle of that. Make sure the center is in the center. Let's check. Well, I didn't do very good that time. Oh yeah, okay, so I can get through it now. And if I do hit it, it does work. So that was just a mistake that I had with those collision bits, so make sure you check. This is what it's actually going to check the collisions against. And so because I had erased things before from there, it had all this blurry stuff there where there were probably still colored pixels, but they weren't quite visible to my eye through there. So that's all fine now. And we'll pause the video there, and we'll pick it up in the next one.